It's late March. Snow's still sitting on the ground outside, thick enough you can hear the quiet through the window. You walk down to your basement, the back corner, the one that stays cold all winter. There's a cardboard box on the shelf. Inside, wrapped in old newspaper, is an apple you put there 6 months ago, last September. You peel the paper back and the skin is still tight, still firm under your thumb. You bite into it and it crunches, not soft, not mealy, not that sad spongy texture you get from the supermarket after 2 weeks in a crisper drawer. This apple has been sitting in a dark basement for half a year. No electricity, no plastic wrap, no special equipment. Just newspaper, a box, and a cold room. And it tastes better now than the day you picked it. That's not a story. That's a documented result. Homesteaders across the Northeast have stored certain apple varieties for 8, 10, even 14 months using nothing but this method. The Amish have been doing it for generations, not as a novelty, not as a survival trick, but as a normal part of how they eat. While your refrigerator, that expensive, humming, electricity-eating machine specifically designed to keep food fresh, turns an apple to mush in about 3 weeks. Same fruit, wildly different outcomes. So the question isn't really how the Amish do it. The question is, what's your fridge getting wrong that a cold basement gets right? That answer changes the way you think about storing food. Not just apples, but everything your grandparents kept without plugging anything into a wall. If that's the kind of knowledge you come here for, the kind nobody's selling because there's no profit in it, hit that subscribe button. You'll want to stay for what comes next, because the real surprise isn't the technique. It's what happens when you pick the wrong apple, and why most of us have been picking the wrong apple our entire lives. Here's what most people don't realize about their refrigerator. It's cold, yes, that part it gets right. But cold is only one leg of the stool, and your fridge is missing the other two. The humidity inside a standard home refrigerator runs somewhere around 30 to 40%. An apple, a living, breathing piece of fruit that's still respiring even after you pick it, needs closer to 90% humidity to stay firm over time. Your fridge is essentially dehydrating that apple, slowly, from the moment you put it in the crisper drawer. That's why the skin wrinkles. That's why the flesh goes mealy. It's not rot, it's drought. Your apple is dying of thirst inside the one machine you trusted to keep it alive.
Now add the second problem. Your fridge is a small sealed box full of different fruits and vegetables, all breathing out a gas called ethylene. Ethylene is the ripening hormone. Every fruit produces it, some more than others. In an open root cellar or a cold basement, that gas drifts away. In your fridge, it builds up. One bruised peach in the crisper drawer is flooding your apples with a chemical signal that says, "Ripen faster, soften now, it's time." You've heard the old saying, "One bad apple spoils the bunch." That's not a metaphor. That's literal biology. One damaged apple releases a surge of ethylene that accelerates decay in every apple touching it or trapped in the same space. Your fridge concentrates that gas like a greenhouse. The Amish approach isn't some mysterious ancient ritual. It works because it solves exactly these two problems. A root cellar or a cool basement corner holds steady at around 32 to 40 degrees, with humidity naturally sitting at 80 to 95%, because earth and stone breathe moisture. The air circulates gently. The temperature doesn't cycle on and off like a compressor. It's stable, cool, and damp, which is precisely the environment an apple evolved to endure through winter. The fruit doesn't know it's been picked. As far as its biology is concerned, it's still hanging on the tree in late autumn, waiting. And the technique itself is almost embarrassingly simple. You take each apple, and it must be perfect. No bruise, no nick,
no soft spot, stem still attached. And you wrap it individually in a sheet of newspaper. One apple, one sheet. You lay them in a single layer inside a shallow cardboard box or a wooden crate, none of them touching. Then you put that box in the coldest, darkest, most humid corner you've got. That's it. The newspaper does two things. It cushions the fruit, and it isolates each apple so that if one begins to spoil, the ethylene and moisture don't jump to its neighbors. Every week through the winter, you check the box. Any apple with soft spots or discolored paper gets pulled. The rest stay sealed in their little paper cocoons, quietly keeping. That technique has been documented to hold Newton Pippin apples, a variety developed in New York in the 1700s, for 14 months in a basement that never even reached ideal root cellar temperature. 14 months. That's not 6 weeks in a crisper drawer. That's an apple harvested in October, still good enough to bake a pie the following Christmas. Not the next Christmas, the second Christmas. And the homesteader who did it wasn't Amish, didn't have a purpose-built root cellar, and didn't use anything you can't find in your own recycling bin right now. But here's where it gets interesting. And here's the question most people never think to ask. If newspaper and a cold room is all it takes, why can't you just grab a bag of Gala apples from the supermarket and do this? Why doesn't it work with every apple? Because it doesn't. Some apples stored this way will be mush inside 8 weeks. Others will still be crunching at the 1-year mark. Same technique, same temperature, same newspaper. The difference isn't in the storage. The difference is in the apple itself. And that opens up a question that goes a lot deeper than fruit. There are apples that were specifically bred, not in a lab, but over centuries of patient farming, to survive in storage for the better part of a year. Thick-skinned, dense-fleshed, slow to ripen, with a flavor that doesn't just survive time, it actually improves with it. These are the varieties the Amish plant. These are the ones your great-grandparents knew by name. Newton Pippin, Arkansas Black, Wine Sap, Ashmead's Kernel, Northern Spy. You won't find a single one of them in your grocery store's produce section, and that's not an accident.
The Arkansas black apple, for instance, is so hard when you pick it off the tree that biting into one fresh would be genuinely unpleasant. It needs months in cold storage before it softens enough to eat, and when it does, the flavor is rich and complex in a way no modern supermarket apple can touch. Newton Pippin tastes like styrofoam in October. By January, it's extraordinary. These apples were designed for patience. They reward the person who waits. But the modern food system has no use for patience, and no shelf space for an apple that looks rough and needs 3 months to hit its stride. So the question becomes, if these varieties are proven, tested, and superior for home storage, why did they disappear from our lives? Who decided we didn't need them anymore? The answer to that question isn't complicated, but it is uncomfortable. Those heritage apples didn't vanish because they failed. They vanished because they became inconvenient, not for you, but for the supply chain that feeds you. Starting in the mid-20th century, the commercial apple industry needed varieties that looked uniform under fluorescent light, that shipped across the country without bruising, that hit peak sweetness the moment a customer picked them up in aisle 6. Red Delicious fit that bill perfectly. Bright red skin, symmetrical shape, sweet on first bite. It photographs like a dream. It also turns to wet cotton inside 10 days and has a storage life roughly equivalent to a cut flower. But that didn't matter, because the industry had already built the replacement. Walk into any major apple packing facility today, and you'll find something called controlled atmosphere storage. These are sealed rooms, enormous airtight chambers, where oxygen gets pulled down to about 2% and carbon dioxide gets pushed up. The apples essentially go to sleep.
Their respiration slows to almost nothing. On top of that, since around 2002, the industry has used a compound called 1-MCP, sold commercially under the brand name Smart Fresh. It's a gas that blocks the ethylene receptors in the fruit. The apple literally cannot sense its own ripening signal, so it sits there in a sealed room with almost no oxygen, chemically unable to ripen for months on end. That fresh Honeycrisp you bought in April may have been picked the previous September. It looks perfect, it crunches, but something about the flavor is flat. And now you know why. Now here's where honesty matters more than outrage. That technology isn't evil. It feeds millions of people year-round who would otherwise have no access to fresh fruit in February. If you live in an apartment in a warm city with no basement and no orchard within 50 miles, controlled atmosphere storage is the reason you eat apples at all in winter. The system exists because it solves a real problem at massive scale. But what it also did, quietly, without anyone voting on it, was make your grandmother's root cellar knowledge unnecessary. When the industry can keep any mediocre apple looking fresh for 9 months with chemistry and engineering, there's no market incentive to grow a Newton pippin that does it naturally. The skill didn't die because it stopped working. It died because someone else started doing it for you, at a cost you pay in your electric bill, your grocery tab, and your ignorance.
The Amish didn't reject this system on principle or out of stubbornness.
They simply never adopted it. Their food chain still runs the way most American food chains ran before rural electrification. Harvest in fall, store through winter, eat what you saved, plant again in spring. When an Amish family puts up apples in October, they're choosing varieties their community has grown for generations specifically because those apples keep. They're sorting with hands that know what a storage-worthy apple feels like: firm, heavy, unblemished, stem intact. They're wrapping and boxing and checking weekly, not because someone taught them a hack, but because this is just how you eat when you take responsibility for feeding yourself through a cold season without a wire running to your wall.
But let me be honest with you here, because I think you deserve that more than you deserve excitement. This method has real limits, and pretending otherwise would set you up for a pile of brown mush by Thanksgiving. First, temperature matters enormously. If your basement sits at 60 degrees year-round, you're not storing apples for a year. You might get 2 or 3 months, which is still worthwhile, but it's not the same result as a true cold space at 35 degrees. Second, humidity. If you live in a dry climate, your apples will dehydrate and wrinkle faster, even if the temperature is right. A cup of water near the box helps. It's not a perfect fix. Third, and this is the one most people trip on, grocery store apples are a poor starting point. They've likely already been in controlled atmosphere storage for weeks or months. They may be coated in food-grade wax. They may have been treated with 1-MCP. Their clock has already been running, and you can't reset it with newspaper and a basement.
This method works best, truly works, the way the Amish make it work, with fresh-picked, heritage variety, perfect condition apples that go from tree to paper within days.
So here's what you actually do if you want to bring this back into your own life.
This fall, late September, October, find a local orchard or a farmer's market that grows named storage varieties. Ask for Newton Pippin. Ask for Wine Sap, Northern Spy, Arkansas Black. Honeycrisp, too. It surprises people, but plant breeders at the University of Minnesota have said that Honeycrisp has storage capacity unlike almost any modern apple. If the orchard doesn't know what you're talking about, find a different orchard. Buy a bushel of the best unblemished fruit you can find. Take it home the same day. Sort them hard. Any apple with a bruise, a nick, a missing stem, a soft spot go straight into the sauce pot or the cider press. That's not waste, that's triage. Wrap each perfect apple in a full sheet of newspaper. 1 apple, 1 sheet. Lay them in single layers in shallow boxes, no fruit touching.
Slide those boxes into the coldest, darkest, dampest corner of your basement, your unheated garage, your attached shed. Anywhere that holds steady below 40 degrees but won't freeze. Put a thermometer in there. Check the box once a week, and pull anything that feels soft or shows discolored paper. That's the whole system. Newspaper, a box, a cold room, the right apple, and patience. No electricity, no chemicals, no sealed chambers, no equipment you need to buy, maintain, or plug in. The Amish didn't invent this. Your great-grandparents did it too. The Amish just never stopped. And there's something worth sitting with in that. The fact that the most effective food preservation method for the single most common fruit in America requires nothing more than knowledge, care, and a willingness to do it yourself. We kept the old saying, "One bad apple spoils the bunch." We say it all the time, but we forgot it came from a real place, from real people, standing in real root cellars, checking real apples wrapped in real newspaper, pulling the soft ones before they ruined the rest. We kept the words and lost the practice. This is how you get the practice back. If you've stored apples through a winter, or if you've got a heritage tree on your land you never knew was special, I'd like to hear about it in the comments. And if you're thinking about building a proper root cellar to do this at real scale, that's a bigger story, and it's one worth telling next.